What's the last thing that happened that completely ruined your day? Now, I'm not talking about the big stuff, not the real emergencies, but the small stuff like the flat tyre, the meeting that didn't go well, or the flight that got cancelled. Isn't it strange how something so small can hijack an entire day or sometimes longer? You go to bed still thinking about it and you wake up and it's still sitting there uninvited. Now, that's not you being dramatic. That's your nervous system sounding an alarm for a problem it can't tell the size of. And today we're talking about how to fit our reaction to the size of the actual problem, so the small stuff stays small and we get our time and our peace back. Welcome back to the Wonders Within podcast. I'm Nikki Denham, founder of Wellness Wonders Australia. And this one might sound familiar because it's something that I've lived through personally, and I'd love to unpack that with you. Now, I had a holiday planned, one flight, straight there, simple, the kind of trip you count down to for weeks. Now, I got to the airport bright and early, ready to start my holiday, to find that my flight had been cancelled. Now, the airline did rebook me, but now I had 2 flights instead of 1 and a later departure time, which meant less time. And in my mind, in its current state, meant more room for something else to go wrong. Now, I landed for my connection with barely any time to spare and found myself running through the airport, bags bouncing beside me, watching the gate numbers blur past as I desperately tried to find the right one. Now, my heart was pounding, but it wasn't just the running. Somewhere along the way, I had stopped believing that things were going to go smoothly. I was already bracing for the next thing to go wrong, trying to get ahead of a problem that hadn't even happened yet. Now, I made it, but barely. Second flight down, I landed at my actual destination, tired, wound up, and running on adrenaline. And I went to find my shuttle, booked and paid for in advance, ready and waiting for me, or so I thought. Now, it was gone and the company had closed for the day. And that was it. That was the moment everything tipped. I was angry. I cried, standing there with my bags in a place that I was supposed to be excited about. I wanted to turn around and go home. But because I am in fact a stubborn and resilient human, I decided to hire a car. And I drove through hills and rainforests to get to the resort. Scenery that I should have been soaking in, but I was too wound up to really see it. Now, I arrived at the resort. It was absolutely stunning. The room was perfection. Everything I'd pictured when I'd booked the trip. Then I decided to unpack and freshen up before dinner, only to find that my self-tanner had leaked through my entire suitcase. That was the last straw. I lost it. Here I was, paradise right in front of me, and I couldn't feel a single second of it. After all of it, the cancelled flight, the sprint, the missed shuttle, the car hire, the self-tanner, none of it was an actual crisis. Not one part of it, but my whole body was acting like it was. Now, I had the clothes washed, the suitcase cleaned. I skipped dinner and went to sleep because there wasn't anything left to do that night except let that whole day be over. Now, the next morning when I awoke, I made a decision. Not a feeling that arrived on its own, I can assure you, but an actual choice made on purpose. My holiday starts now. From there, it was incredible. Wonderful people, snorkeling on the Great Barrier Reef, the sunshine and the sand. And I didn't want it to end. Genuinely, it was the trip of a lifetime. And in the end, all I actually lost was 24 hours. Looking back, healed and clear, it was so unnecessary, every bit of it. Not because my feelings weren't valid, because they absolutely were, but because I let something that was over keep living in my body for far longer than it needed to. So let's talk about what's actually happening in moments like that. Now, your nervous system, unfortunately, doesn't rank problems. It doesn't know the difference between a real threat and an inconvenience. A cancelled flight and a genuine emergency can trigger the exact same response if you haven't trained yourself to pause first. Now, we're not broken. We just weren't taught how to react any other way. So most of us default to treating every setback like an emergency. Think about it. Nobody sits us down and teaches us how to size up a problem. We just absorb it, usually by watching the adults around us react to their own flat tires and bad days. So we grow up wired to match the drama of the moment to whatever's in front of us, big or small. And here's the thing that I want you to hear. These moments end. The flight lands, the suitcases get cleaned, the setback passes, whether we are ready or not. But we don't always end with it. We keep reacting long after the actual problem is over. That's the real cost, not the flat tire or the missed shuttle or the self-tanner. It's the hours and days we spend still fighting something that's already finished. So the work isn't stopping these moments from happening, because that's life and things will continue to happen. Flights will get cancelled, meetings will go badly, and suitcases will leak. That part isn't in our control. What is in our control is closing the gap between when the problem actually ends and when we let ourselves feel okay again. And for me, that looked like doing the practical thing first, the washing, the cleaning, and then the sleep. Not skipping the feeling, just not living in it past its use by date. And then choosing on purpose the next morning when it was over. And here are the actual facts. A flat tire is just a flat tire. A bad meeting is just a bad meeting. And a cancelled flight is just a few extra hours of inconvenience. They only become catastrophes when we let them borrow the weight of something bigger than they actually are. The people you love, the work you care about, and the years still ahead of you, that's the actual size of your life. And if we can zoom out far enough, most of what derails us barely registers next to that. Now, here's what I'd love for you to sit with this week. So grab your journal, find a quiet moment, and ask yourself, where in my life have I let something small take up more space than it deserved? What did that cost me in time, in energy, and in a day that I can't get back? And then ask, the next time it happens, what would it look like to choose when the moment is over instead of waiting for it to fade on its own? Just notice this week when the reaction is bigger than the problem. That noticing is the whole practice. Now, thank you for listening today. And if something landed and if you recognized yourself in the spiral, the small thing that becomes your whole day, I want you to know that's not a flaw. That's a nervous system doing its job a little too well. You're allowed to feel it, and you're allowed to choose when it's over. You're allowed to have a bad moment without it becoming a bad day, and you're allowed to be upset about something small without it meaning something's wrong with you. You're allowed to zoom out and remember how big your life actually is. Your problems don't have to be small to be valid. They just have to be bigger than your whole life. Until next time, bye for now.